we will be looking at inverse trigonometric functions. Remember, to find the inverse, you switch x and y, and you solve for y. So the inverse trig function is denoted either with a -1, like sine to the -1 as in number 1, or the word arc, sine, arc, cosine, or arc tangent. The sine and tangent inverse functions are defined between -π/2 and π/2. For the sine, it's included. For the tangent, it is not included for the range. And for the arc cosine or inverse cosine function, the range is defined to be between 0 and pi. So what that means is our answers here when we solve these problems, because they're given in terms of finding sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tangent inverse, will either be answers in 1 if all of them are positive. If cosine is negative, the answer will be a quadrant 2 angle. If tangent or sine ratio is negative, it will be a quadrant 4 angle. Okay, so for sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tangent inverse, our answer should not have a quadrant 3 angle. Okay, so the first one says sine inverse of 1/2. Well, 1/2 is positive, so that would be in quadrant 1. So we can find this answer either by unit circle or x over y, x, y, and r, or we can go back to our 30, 60, 90. I know it says radians. And sine is opposite over hypotenuse, which would be 30 degrees, which would be pi over 6. So our answer is 30 degrees, which would be pi over 6. Cosine inverse of -√2 over 2. So what happens for your cosine inverse? It's negative in this quadrant here. So that's going to be a 1 √2, which is a 45-degree angle. So that is 135 degrees, or in terms of radians, 3 pi over 4. So the answer we're looking for is 3 pi over 4. Tangent inverse is √3 over 3. Again, that's positive, putting the triangle itself in quadrant 1. It's been rationalized to be a 30-degree angle, which again gives us pi over 6. Use a calculator to express each angle to the nearest tenth of a degree. Because remember, when you're doing the inverse function, you're looking for the angle. You've been given the ratio. So I've worked these on the calculator. The first one is negative 9.8 degrees. Okay, you would do second sine and type it in. Make sure your mode is in degrees. Cosine inverse is negative. We get 118.1 degrees, what we expect, because that's in quadrant 2. Oh, let's talk about number 4 for just a minute. A negative angle is in quadrant 4, which again, that's what we expect. So your sine inverse and tangent inverse answers will all be acute angles. And then the only obtuse angle greater than 90 and less than 180 is going to be cosine inverse of a negative number. Tangent inverse of a negative is going to be in quadrant 4, and it's negative 25.2 degrees. Okay, so we want to evaluate without a calculator. Whenever you see these, that means draw a picture. Okay, so we will draw a picture for the first one. Sine inverse of negative 8 over 17. That's in quadrant 4 because sine inverse is negative in quadrant 4. It's opposite. So here's our angle, 8, 17, and we know this is 15 by Pythagorean theorem. So the cosine of an angle in quadrant 4 is adjacent over hypotenuse. So this answer becomes 15 over 17. Okay, cosine inverse of 3/5. Notice it's positive. It will be in quadrant 1. Adjacent over hypotenuse. It's a 3, 4, 5 triangle. So tangent of that is opposite over adjacent, 4 over 3. All right, so now let's go ahead and let's look at these angles. All right, sine inverse of negative root 3 over 2. So what happens here? The negative is in this quadrant. Okay, so our answer will be a negative. That's a 60-degree angle. So that's going to be negative pi over 3. And if you want to, you could double check it on your graphing calculator. I'm in radians, which should be fine. So let's see. Second sine inverse of negative root 3 divided by 2. And if I do pi over 3, we get the same answer. It should be negative pi over 3. Okay, arctangent of 1. Okay, so arctangent is positive there in quadrant 1. So let's draw that picture. No, it's 1 over 1. It's a 45-degree angle. So you're looking for the angle, which would be pi over 4. And again, if you want to double check on your calculator just to confirm, maybe give you some confidence, that's correct. Okay, let's look at this one. Cosine of sine inverse of 24 over 25. Again, when you're given values that are not your 1, 2, or root 3, you're going to need to draw a picture. Okay, that's 24 over 25 is positive, so we will draw it in quadrant 1. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, and I believe that's a 7. I'm going to double check that. If I do 7 squared plus 24 squared, we get 625, and then if I check 25 squared, I get 625. So off the picture, cosine, because this is what this represents. This piece here is the angle, theta. So look at your picture, that would be 7 over 25. And again, if you want to double check the calculator, we check it and we get the answer. Okay, and the last one, we're going to do the arc sine, not first, but second. So we have cosine of negative 7 pi over 12. So negative 7 pi over 3. Okay, so we know we're going to go around this y, which is clockwise. So if you take negative 7 pi over 3 plus 2 pi, because those are coterminals, you get negative pi over 3. So what happens is it brings us to a pi over 3 angle here, and it's negative because it goes clockwise. So pi over 3 is 60. So again, off your picture, this value, cosine of negative 7 pi over 3 is a ratio. That is 1/2. So sine inverse of 1/2 is equal to, it should be 30 degrees, which is pi over 6. So, I hope you found this video worthwhile. I hope you have a great day.